Making your own cheese can be really frustrating. You've got so many factors that you need to consider. Different kinds of milk, different kinds of proteins in the milk, pH levels, fat content, pasteurization, homogenization, precise temperature control. The list goes on and on. Then you've got the time, you've got the hassle, and you've got all the equipment required to make it. And on top of all that, even if you've done everything right, there's no guarantee of success. Aren't we actually trying to get people to try making this recipe, not scare them away from it? Good point. I absolutely believe everyone could and should make this cheese at home, and you're going to end up with a delicious product. I've done a lot of testing to identify common problems and find solutions for them. And it really isn't as difficult as I may have made it seem. But cheese making, like bread making, is never foolproof, and it's important that I be honest with you guys so that you won't feel overly frustrated if it doesn't come out right on the first or even the second go. And remember, you just made your own cheese. The bragging rights alone should justify giving this a go. Okay, that makes sense. But you still haven't answered the question. Why would anyone make their own cheese? Can't you just buy it and save yourself that time and hassle? Well, you're right again, but you're not seeing the whole picture. If you can access good quality milk, the taste of this cheese is just amazing. In my experience, quality milk is easier to access than the quality finished product, so we take matters into our own hands. And learning to make this cheese opens up a whole new world of other cheeses that may not be available for you to purchase wherever you are in the world. The basic principles used in this mozzarella can be applied to many other fresh cheeses, including paneer, queso fresco, cream cheese, feta, halloumi, just to name a few. We also get a bit more value out of our purchase, which is nice. You can make ricotta, another kind of fresh cheese, out of the leftover whey from making this mozzarella. In fact, I was going to make it as part of this video, but the project was getting way too big, and so I'm going to make a separate video on that coming soon, so check out that. But really, most importantly, the sense of satisfaction and accomplishment that you get when you make something for yourself is immeasurable, and especially so when it's challenging. I'm a huge believer in expanding my toolset and learning new skills. Now, I most certainly don't make my own cheese every time I make pizza. I don't have the time, and neither do you. But in those times, when you really want the best pizza or caprese salad that you can get, making your own fresh mozzarella is like a cheat code for taste, texture, and your own growth as a food maker.
So there's a pretty simple list of ingredients here, guys. We've got rennet tablets, citric acid, and milk. We also use salt, which is not shown here. First thing we need to do is dissolve the citric acid in some water. The amount is trivial. I don't really need my scale here. You just need enough for it to dissolve. A couple tablespoons is fine. I use dry ingredients with the citric acid and rennet tablets because I always have them lying around. Rennet will go off eventually, even kept in the fridge. So I like the dry shelf-stable stuff, but if you have liquid rennet and vinegar, that's totally fine too. As usual, you're going to find a full written recipe down below, so don't worry about the amounts. You'll find them easily written. Now we're going to add our milk to our pot. I use 4 liters here, or a gallon, but you can use half batches. When I did all my testing, I was using half batches. And we want to add the citric acid to the milk now. Slow it in gently, stir it gently, keep it moving. No real rocket science here, guys. Just get it mixed through. And we're going to place it on the heat now, and we're going to put it on a low heat, probably as low as you can get without having to wait, a glacial age. If you have too much heat, you're going to have bad results, as you're about to see here in a second. So yeah, that's really one of the keys. Keep it gentle, just enjoy the process.
Check out this photo from one of my early test attempts. It actually wasn't as bad as it looks in the picture, because that curdling just happened on the top layer. This is uncommon, but seems to be more likely to occur if you try to heat the milk too quickly, so be careful about that. Keep it to a low or a medium-low heat. On a related note, some milks will curdle quickly and will never stick together no matter what you do. In the past, I have made this with regular old blue top milk from the supermarket, and it came out great. But in this testing, I couldn't get it to work. I suspect it has to do with the pasteurization process. If this happens to you, don't get too frustrated and definitely don't throw it away. You can drain this through a cheesecloth, a t-shirt, an old kitchen towel, anything that you have around. You press it with a weight for a couple hours, and you're going to end up with something very much like paneer, a wonderful Indian cheese.
So our milk has been heating now for about 5 to 7 minutes. We're just going to check it and see if it's up to temperature. Should be getting pretty close. Can't rush it here, guys. Just take your time. In the meantime, we're going to mix together our rennet. Just drop it in water. Again, the amount of water is trivial. It doesn't really matter. It's pretty cool how it blooms like that. And then we're just going to whisk it through a little bit. It's going to remain cloudy no matter what. It doesn't dissolve completely like the citric acid. That's fine. It's to be expected. So we're going for 32 degrees, and we should be getting really close now. I think it's probably about 10 minutes in total heating. I kept it as close to low as I could get without the burner turning off. There we are. Perfect. So now we're going to mix the rennet in, and it's the same process that we did with the citric acid. We're just going to slowly pour it in, and we're going to stir at the same time. And you can see it's still cloudy there. It never goes clear. That's fine. I don't really know why, but that's how it is. And just nice and slow. And I think there's some kind of zen to making this cheese. I thought about speeding this part up, but I kind of just enjoy the simple process of gently stirring the milk and seeing the way the patterns develop. Maybe someone should write a book about meditation and cheese making and mindfulness. Anywho, after about 30 seconds or so, it should be ready to go. And we're going to put the lid back onto it, and we're going to let rest for between 20 to 30 minutes. It depends. Most of the time when I've done it, it's been set at 20 minutes, but it could take a little bit longer. So after our 20-minute rest, we're going to just have a look at it and see. And it should be set. It still just looks like milk, but it's pretty cool. You're about to see. The camera's really struggling to focus here. Sorry for you can see it kind of zooming in and out. It's a bit manic. I think the white background, it doesn't like, and my lights aren't really great. I don't have a good diffuser yet, but you can see that it's actually gone solid and kind of jelly-like. It's pretty cool. It's quite a fun process. You can see it pulling away from the sides there. It is a gel, but it's a really gentle gel. It's not a very strong one. So now we're going to slice up the curds. I do them in about 1-inch slices. That's about 25 centimeters. I don't know that it really matters. That's just what I settled on, and I just carried on doing it that way. You probably don't want them really small. It'll take you a long time as well. But you probably don't want them too large either, because they'll struggle to get the whey out. So yeah, I found 1 inch just to be just about the right size. So it still doesn't look like anything, which is, I guess, kind of cool, but also like, hey, you've done all that work. You guys probably think I'm just slicing milk. I promise it's set. You'll get to see here in a second, the lines will kind of emerge. So we've turned the heat back on, and we want to bring the temperature up to 41 degrees now, or thereabouts. And I didn't do a super great job on this. It was fine. It came out really great anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I actually did get my curds a little bit overheated here. But in the meantime, we just want to kind of tease apart those little lines that you've cut, and you want to turn them into individual cubes. I guess they're more like columns than cubes because they go the length of the pot. But anyway, you can start to see the lines emerging now. Yeah, there we go. It's cool how they kind of slide around. Super jiggly. So we want to get that temperature up to 41 degrees now. I think I got mine a little bit hot. I was struggling, as you'll see here in a second, to get a good reading for the temperature. And I think what was happening is I was actually sticking the thermometer into the curds themselves. So I was getting a false reading, because it would read anywhere from, say, 32 up to like 45 degrees. It was really struggling to get a consistent read. But yeah, as I said, I think that's actually my fault. I think the water The curds would be trapping some of the heat that's coming from underneath, but I think it was less so than I imagined. So just keep them moving a little bit, push them around. You're trying to get the whey to come out of the curds. You're kind of trying to get them all to separate a little bit, but they're going to separate and kind of come together as a bit of a lump. It's kind of a weird thing, but again, just take your time. Don't heat too much. I didn't have my heat too high. It just took too long. But we should be getting pretty close. You can see there it's reading 39 in some places, 35. That's Celsius, obviously. And there we go. I'm taking the average reading for that to be 41, but I think it was probably more like 45 to 50 degrees. You can see by the stringiness. At this point, I should have just put the lid on and let them sit a few minutes and be done with it. Some recipes say leave 20 minutes, but I think that's far too long. Anyway, once you've brought them up to temperature and they've had a few minutes, or you've messed them around with them like I did, we actually want to drain them. And this is a tool that I made to try to cut the curds, and it didn't work very well, but I repurposed it here because, you know, if I go through the effort of actually making it, it's just a prototype. It took me like an hour to make it, but I like this method, and I'm about to explain why I prefer this as opposed to using a slotted spoon.
Most recipes suggest that you lift out the curds with the slotted spoon. I'm not a fan of this method. I think it's too messy. Little bits of curd end up sticking to the spoon, and you end up dripping whey all over the place. You can use a cooling rack or even your hand to hold back the curds. I didn't make this tool just for this process. It has been repurposed from a failed attempt to try to cut the curds more efficiently. I think this method also has the additional advantage of forming the disparate curds into a large mass. The gentle side-to-side agitation expels more whey, and you end up with a curd lump that is much easier to divide into similar sized batches for stretching. I don't recommend that you try draining them through a colander. The curds dam up the holes immediately, and it just takes ages and ages for them to drain.
Tell me again about how this method is less messy. Looks pretty messy to me, Micah. Anyway, I still think it's a better way, even if it still does create some mess. No matter which way you do it, you're going to get stuff dripping. There's no way to avoid it. I had a few escapees. Got to wrangle them up with the slotted spoon. And that's pretty good. So we'll get rid of that bowl away, and we will dump the curds out into a pot now. So they've kind of come together in one big lump, which is pretty good. That makes it easier to portion. A lot of the big production facilities, when they're doing mozzarella, have big vats of it, and you don't cut them into individual portions. You stretch, and then you kind of rip off pieces at a time and form those into balls. But I like pre-portioning it so that I know that the balls are all roughly the same size. I'm being a bit pedantic about keeping the whey here because I'm going to make it into ricotta. If you're not going to make ricotta and you're not keeping the whey, it doesn't really matter. You can just lose what's going to come out of here, but I don't want to lose all of it. So that's pretty good. Now, oh look, lines. Those weren't there before. How did that happen? Yeah, I forgot to film the initial cut, but anyway, you guys get it. So I choose to do 6 in this case. Normally with 4 liters of milk, I would do them into 8 small ones or 4 big ones, but this time I just decided to mix her out and do 6. There's probably 3 or 4 grams of salt. I didn't really measure. I always add more before I eat it anyway, so that's kind of an arbitrary amount of salt. You can add more whenever you want. Don't have to add any, you can just add it when you eat. So now we're going to lift them out of the tray. They're still really delicate. It's a cool feeling. It's like the most delicate jello you can imagine. So now we're ready to heat them. So I was watching a video once, and the guy insisted on not pouring the boiling water directly on the curds. I don't know that it matters, but I just decided to do it, and I've kept doing it because that's what I do. So yeah, this is boiling water straight out of the kettle. It's pretty hot, so use gloves of some sort. I have pretty strong chef hands, but even for me, it's too hot without at least one pair of gloves. If you put two on, it's even better. So the idea here is you want to get the curds nice and stretchy. That's what the boiling water is going to do. It's going to kind of melt them, and if you've done everything right up to this point, it should melt them, and they'll be they're going to feel like they're not going to come together, that they're kind of going to just dissolve, but they won't. Some way is actually, it's weird, they're actually in water, but you're also expelling water from them at the same time. So they're kind of sloopy and sloppy. But each time you lift them and move them, the protein chains are going to elongate. They're going to form together and they're going to elongate. They're going to force more moisture out, and then they're going to get stretchy. Very similar to bread. So there we go. Look at that stretch. Look at that cheese pull. That's amazing. So you just want to kind of pull it out and stretch it and fold it, and anytime it starts to cool down, you just dip it back into the hot water. There should be enough hot water in there to last the whole thing. You could pour some more in if you felt you didn't have enough, but stretch it any way you can and fold it back on itself and stretch it more and fold it. I probably did 7 or 8 total folds here. Now when you start forming them into a ball, it's pretty similar to making pizza balls. You're going to kind of tuck it under, you're going to stretch the outside, and you're going to tuck it underneath itself and kind of push it up from the bottom. So my fingertips are forcing it up underneath. So it's kind of making like a concave from underneath. And then I'm going to seal it from the bottom as well too. If you've watched the pizza dough video, it's really similar process. And that's come together pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with that. I've made hundreds of these things, so they should be getting pretty good by now. And you don't necessarily have to fold it into or roll it into a ball shape. You can just I was experimenting here with kind of like a dough loaf shape. So it's kind of like a tube or a cylinder. And that worked just as good as rolling it into a ball. So really, any shape you want, as long as it's kind of held together and you have a pretty good skin on the outside so that it doesn't take in too much moisture. So at this point, it's really just kind of rinse and repeat, and take your time and enjoy the process. Hopefully your hands aren't burning too much by the end of it. The gloves do a surprisingly good job of protecting your hand from the heat. So now you want to dunk them into ice water, and you want to kind of keep them moving around when you put it in. You don't want to just drop them in. You want to kind of move it around and give the outside a chance to cool down before you let go of it, so it'll hold its shape. Those were already in there. It was already pretty cold, so I didn't need to give it as long. I'd probably actually swirl it around for a couple more seconds before I let it go normally. So we've formed all 6 of them now, and we're going to weigh our results. And yep, pretty much the same as always. 550. It's always between about 500 and 600. I don't know what the variance is. There's always a bit of variance. But there we go, look at that cut. So our cross section is going to show absolutely nothing. Yep, still looks like nothing. And we're going to slice it, and then we're going to salt it, and we're going to taste it. So this is flaky sea salt. Just use whatever salt you have around, doesn't matter. I like a lot of it, so you can see I'm putting on quite a bit. Looks pretty cool for the shot too.
All right, let's try it. They're gonna focus? There you go. Give it a taste. Wow. That might be the best batch I've made. That's incredible. It's rich. It's creamy. It's quite sweet because the milk that I have is really good. Probably could be a little bit more stretchy. I wonder if I'd given it maybe one more stretch. But, I mean, it's really hard to complain about that. I made so many batches of it, it should be good. Hope you guys give it a try. Okay guys, well that's pretty much it for this video. On the way out, let's recap our keys to success. Use the best quality milk that you can access or afford, ideally raw milk or as close to it as possible. Heat gently guys, a few more minutes wait will be worth the effort. Drain the whey out the sides of the pot as opposed to lifting them out with a spoon. Place your cheese balls into ice water and let them chill thoroughly in there so that they'll hold their shape. Most importantly, have fun, put smiles on the faces of your friends and family, and boast about your prowess in the kitchen to everyone that you can. I'm not a fan of this method. I think it's too methy. Methy.